we know exactly what Illinois is now. They're good, but not great. But welcome back to the Illini Audible Podcast. My name is Saeed Bravo. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the pod. As always, I really, really appreciate it. And we're back talking about this Illinois football team. And obviously, I just got back from that loss against Ohio State. Just got back from Memorial Stadium and just popped on, talk about this game and just kind of what I saw and what my thoughts are on what we've seen from this team so far throughout this year. And it's obviously, like I mentioned, I think Illinois, we know what they are, and I said this in takeaways video, but they're good. They're not great yet, and they're not in 2025. I mean, now we have two losses to point to that are, by all accounts, losses that you look at and you say, well, they fell back to earth. I mean, you look at the hype nationally, you look at maybe what some fans had expected coming into the season, and the idea that this Illinois football team could potentially be a college football playoff contender loomed. But now, at this point, when you point at that loss in that dreadful day in Bloomington a couple weeks ago, and you get this loss today, while that loss on the road against Indiana was far, far worse. You look at this game against Ohio State where they came to your place, and it felt like for the most part you really didn't compete to the highest level that you at least could have this game. And you look at the consequences of that. It's hard to imagine a world where Illinois does get to that point, at least this season, and it probably has to do a lot more with personnel than it has to do with anything else. I think Illinois lost a good amount of star power from last season with just the guys that ended up leaving the program. And obviously, a Pat Bryant. The 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 part that really is sucks, I think, is that you had a lot of really good pieces coming back, and you felt really hopeful that a lot of these pieces could take a step forward this season and really show you a lot of promise and really show you that they can push Illinois and keep pushing Illinois to push the bar even higher. So far this season, it's still good, but it hasn't gotten to that point where you think, hey, this is a team that could really put their hands in and make it make it out make it make it tough for the committee to look at it and say, hey, we don't want to put this team on the playoff. And now it's pretty clear to me that this is a pretty good team, and not that that's a bad thing, right? Like, I mean, you look at how many years of Illinois failure and how many years of just middling football this program had historically. It's Illinois is still going in the right direction, and you look at the coaching staff, and you feel good about the future of this team. Granted, it's gonna be tough to compete against programs like Ohio State to recruit a lot of really good players. It's always been that way. This the climb is steep. But now you're gonna count on fighting against teams like IU because they're really cementing themselves as a team that is might repeat as the college football playoff contender again. We'll see how much they're able to do. But I mean, I have them on my TV right now. They're leading 13-10 at Oregon. I mean, that's hard to do. Illinois didn't compete against Oregon last year when they went to their place at this point around. I think it was Halloween or at some point in the fall last season, and uh, it's a tough pill to swallow. Maybe it is a tough pill to swallow for some of you guys, but there's really not much else that can be said, and it's okay. The Illinois will still be a team that ends up going either to the Citrus Bowl again, to a Peach Bowl, to some other bowl game, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. But that was my immediate takeaway, just knowing that we have a good sample size in terms of we have a lot to work with in terms of what we've seen from this team. We've seen them go on the road, beat teams like Duke. We've seen them go beat teams like Purdue. They struggled against really, really, really good teams, and they're good, not great. All right, back to what we saw inside of this game, because there was a lot. And obviously, coming out of that that Purdue game, you felt like Illinois could have a chance. You felt like Illinois could compete, especially because this was at home. It was always going to be a tough challenge because of the caliber of team that Ohio State is. Ohio State was incredible in this game. I mean, their defense was exactly as advertised, and the part that really stood out to me is how much Illinois' offense was. It's probably considered one of the better offenses in college football. I mean, listen, you have so many pieces returning on the offensive line. You have a guy in Hank Beatty who is tied for third, or was tied for third in Big Ten receiving yards, and Luke Altmaier, who's a third-year quarterback, has all the experience under his belt and has the ability to go out and put a lot of points. We literally saw that last week at Purdue, and today was just the complete opposite. I mean, if just to put things into perspective, Luke Altmaier had his first interception and his first fumble in this game, and I'm pretty sure both of those came in the first half. Now I have to check once again, but it's one of those things where it's like you Illinois was faced with a really tough challenge, and they weren't able to meet that, unfortunately. And one of the things that Brett Bielema talked about in his post-game press conference is the idea that this team could have played up tempo more, and that's not necessarily that's not necessarily a message that speaks bad on the play caller, which is Barry Lunny Jr., of course, who's been calling a hell of a season throughout most of this year. But it's also has to do with the quarterback, and I wish that we would have been able to ask him that type of question in a post game press conference. But it's always going to be the same, that they're going to bounce back. He's going to take a really good shower, and it's gonna, he's going to come back, and they're not going to waver, which is fine. Yeah, they're not going to waver. There's no reason to believe that. I mean, this is a really good team. Once again, we talked about it extensively. The tough part was that they couldn't really get anything done. Back to what really impressed me about this Ohio State defense. You look at how they played throughout this game. You look at how they came into this game as well, having allowed no red zone touchdowns this season. And just to put things into perspective, the first touchdown that they allowed comes in the second half, after they had already stifled Illinois' offense multiple times this game on the road. They had already stopped them at the one inside in the first half. In the second quarter, that was late in the second quarter as well, and it took almost every ounce of effort for Illinois' offense to get into the end zone. It took a trick play from Barry Lunny's bag that ended up being snapped to Luke Altmaier. Luke Altmaier passes it, or hands it off to Hank Beatty. Hank Beatty shovel passes it to Aiden Lawfrey, and Aiden Lawfrey takes it a yard in, and he had, granted, it felt like he had 5 yards of clean grass, but that's pretty incredible. The fact that it took almost every single ounce of effort to get to the end zone, to get even only 7 points against this Ohio State defense. That's how good the Ohio State defense has been throughout the season. It's just been, and you felt it throughout a lot of this game. It's just how stifling this defense was. I mean, that first drive, in the second quarter, that Illinois was threatening, that ended up being a David Alano field goal. But for the most part, you felt like Illinois was going to score on that drive. What Illinois got into the red zone, and that's one of the mistakes that we'll cover inside of this pod. But I mean, Illinois was driving down the field, and you were going to score 7 points, and they shot themselves in the foot. And what ended up happening was in with a first and goal, I believe, and maybe it was second and goal, but Barry Lunny calls an RPO or a play action pass. Nothing materializes in terms of wide receivers getting open. Luke Altmaier is forced to flush the pocket, go to the outside, and take it himself. He gets tackled he loses a couple yards, and then you're working with more yardage trying to get, you're behind the sticks now. And then immediately after, tight end Christian Abney has a total miscue, a total just brain fart where he does a false start, and then that puts you even more behind the sticks. And that at that point you're like, well, any chance of scoring a touchdown, I mean, say goodbye to that, because this defense is absolutely great and you weren't able to do anything. And that part of it is very unfortunate for this Illinois football team. But to put things into perspective, you look at the first four drives of this Illinois offense, and I'll read this out for you. It was the first drive resulted in an interception. It was a 6-play, 18-yard drive that took 2 minutes and 40 seconds off the play clock and culminated in an interception. The second drive was a 4-play, 16-yard gain for 1 minute and 24 seconds, resulted in a punt. The third drive, was a 10-play, 22-yard drive that took 5 minutes off the play clock, and it resulted in a turnover on downs. Granted, that was when you thought that Cole Rusk had regained control, reestablished himself in the game plan, because he had gotten pushed off by a defender, came back. You thought that he might have been able to reestablish the fact that he was on the field for the play, but refs called it the other way. And that ended up being a turnover on downs. And the very next drive, you start at your own 26, or you start at your own 25. Kyle Valentine has that deadly fumble. And that's the other side of things, where it's the turnovers. In total, Illinois had 5 turnovers. I would argue that, yeah, I mean, obviously the last one was just a garbage time. You had to go for it. But 4 total turnovers, and it's tough when you put that on Illinois' defense. And for the most part, and we'll talk about the defense, I thought the defense played pretty well. You look at the way that they improved from one week to another. Last week, there was a lot of talk about the amount of tackles that they missed. And yes, while that was true, I think this game, they totally turned that around, and you felt like you didn't really see a lot. It was just a lot of mismatched talent. I think Jaheim Clark played a pretty decent game, all things considered. He was lined up against Jeremiah Smith, and you're going to lose against Jeremiah Smith. And things got chippy at one point, but I think for the most part, Jaheim Clark did pretty well for himself. Anyways, on the other side of Ohio State's, I mean, you look at how many times they started in Illinois territory. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm looking at the right. Yeah, 5 times they started at their own in Illinois, in plus territory, in Illinois territory. Resulted in a touchdown, a field goal, a touchdown, and a punt. You can't. I mean, we talked post game again with Matt Bailey and with Big Unk Flibahunt, James Thompson Jr. We talked to them out at the post game about the whole shebang, and they're never gonna say that they lament the fact that they had to start. I mean, they had to put out the fires, is what James Thompson said. I mean, it's their job, but when you have a defense talking about drawing things up like they're playing defense, I think that's very telling, because that what Matthew Bailey said was that, yeah, it felt like we came in. It's like they had already had explosives on us, so we were just playing tight defense. We were just playing defense. That I think that's a little telling on the way that they look at their plays. That okay, well, when they're not on their plus territory, they're not inside their own territory, then they might be more apt to let a couple things go. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to do their job when they have so many drives that they have to take care of. And for Illinois, it was the story. It was just so many turnovers, so many punts, not much at all done that they were able to do outside of that one touchdown drive that took so much from them. That was 12 plays, 75 yards, and it took 4 minutes and 54 seconds. It felt like that took like half the day for them to get even that. And so that part of it is really tough. But back to the defense, I thought the defense played for the most part really well. They cleaned up those tackling issues, and you saw there were moments where they were able to stop Ohio State's rushing attack, the running game, and Ohio State had to really rely on their passing attack, which granted it's really really good. But listen, I think Bo Jackson had 10 carries, 47 yards, a long of 17. I think all things considered, you feel okay about it. Donaldson, you do think, okay, he averaged 3.5 yards per carry, 13 attempts, 44 yards. It's tough to stop when you're faced with so much as a defense. And I thought for the most part, Illinois' defense couldn't really do much. Be was charged or they were charged with a lot. They had a lot on their plate, and Illinois' offense just did not carry the load that they needed to. And another part that hurt was the special teams miscue that ended up being the low snap that ended with Keelan Crimmins' knee gracing the grass, the turf, and it gave Ohio State that the ability to start at Illinois territory, and that's when you really start. It felt like that first half, and Brett Bielema said it. Pretty much anything that could go wrong did go wrong, and you lament the way that things turned out. But ultimately, that's what Illinois was charged with, and that's the responsibility of the coaches and the players that were in there. I thought Khalil Valentine had some really good runs inside of this game. Um, Obviously, the dude got twisted on one play. You were worried about. It really seemed like he was in pain on that run where he gave up the fumble, had to be carried out by Brandon Henderson and another one, and I believe it was Melvin Priestley. But listen, uh, I thought he was able to have some really good runs, timely runs. Laufrey also had some really, really good runs. There was one 16-yard rush early to get things going, and then he had that 25-yarder on that drive that they scored that you felt like, okay, like this is exactly what you want from this team. But for the most part, the story was Ohio State moved at will, really. Whenever the passing, they relied on their passing. The secondary was really struggling to stop the physicality and the strengths and the talents of their wide receivers. And pressure wise, I thought they were able to get to the running backs whenever they had the handoffs. The unfortunate part was that you were dealing with one of the better offensive lines and one of the best offensive lines in football, college football, and you didn't dial up that much. That brings me to another point. You didn't dial up all that much pressure on that quarterback. Joe Barna told me a couple days ago is that they it's not like Julian Sayin has blazing legs. Like there were probably moments in that game, and I'm sure Aaron Henry or Brett Bielema will look back at the film and maybe lament it a little. That there were moments in that game where maybe you could have dialed up more than four guys rushing. Maybe you would have dialed up the pressure. Maybe you could have done a little bit more of that, and then things would have been at least a little harder for that Ohio State defense. Granted, I understand how much maybe help at this point the secondary needed because of the health issues that you were faced with. But it's overall, you wonder how much of that did take place. Jeremiah Smith is so good, man. Just the you get. I'd never seen Jeremiah Smith in person. I'd never seen Jeremiah Smith's face. But even walking the field pregame, you could tell that this was a guy that you could tell who Jeremiah Smith was just based on the physical body and the I don't even know what aura, like the aura that you could just tell this guy was really good. And so that part of it was like there was an incomplete 35-yard reception that could have been a turning point for Illinois at that point. It forced Ohio State to punt. Nothing really materialized after that. I mean, Illinois caught a break at that point, and even on those breaks, they weren't able to execute on that. And that might be some stuff where it's like, okay, like there are moments in a game where you're gonna get a break that's gonna go to you, and you're gonna be able to capitalize off it. But Illinois just wasn't able to do that inside of this game. Another part of things was that the reffing in this game was also significantly bad. Like there were moments against Ohio State against Illinois where calls just weren't made. There was definitely times where holding or a defensive pass interference just was blatantly missed. And I don't know, like, listen, I'm sure that deep down, psychologically, I mean, when you're refing the number one team in the country, the bias has to be there, but you have to be an objective ref. I don't know if that's exactly what's happened. I don't know if that's exactly what goes on, whether it be the NFL with the Chiefs, with the Eagles, in college football with teams like Ohio State, with teams like Alabama, teams like Georgia. I don't know. I can't tell you that. But it certainly felt like today, like there were times where Illinois just, if there was a doubt that a play was in jeopardy, that maybe there was a flag, Illinois just never got those calls. And that was unfortunate for Illinois. But just to put things into perspective once again, by the time the second quarter rolled around, Ohio State had already started in plus territory against Illinois for the third time. Another stat that stands out to me that I wrote down. Illinois was 4 for 13 on third down. That can't happen. That is rough. And I understand the challenge that was Ohio State's defense, but when you're a team that has aspirations that are high, you're an offense that is known for its prowess. You're a team that's mostly looked at because of your quarterback, your offense, and your passing attack. 4 for 13 just can't be something that you look at and you say, all right, well, whatever. So that's just a number that I wanted to throw in there as well, because I think that's notable. I think that's important. Matthew Bailey had a good game. Now I'm just throwing a couple of nuggets in here. Matthew Bailey was having a good game. Talked to us post game availability. It's just at the point where it was the third quarter, the average starting. I think the biggest challenge was just how many times Ohio State started so close to or in Illinois territory or close to Illinois territory. And overall, I mean, about this loss, you feel like it's not the end of the world, because Illinois. This is Illinois against the best team in the country. I mean, there's only so much that you can do against a team of this caliber, especially. I mean, this is a national championship team. But with that being said, I think there is something to be said about how many mistakes Illinois made at home. And they talk about the fact that maybe it is the idea of playing like the number one team. They talk about the idea of playing the number one team in the country, maybe getting to them. But at the same time, they tell us in the middle of the week that this is the mentality doesn't change. It's just another opponent. Which one is it, guys? I mean, which one is it? There's the idea that maybe playing the number one team gives you jitters. There was some of that against Oregon last year, And then this idea that every week is the same, we're going to prepare just the next opponent. The only thing that changes the game plan. I mean, which one is it? Because it really seems like it really seems like it is the first one, which is we got jitters, which is fine. It's understandable. These are 20-year-olds, 21 years old, 19-year-olds, 22-year-olds. It's okay. It's just it's fine, but I I don't understand why there isn't a little bit more clarity on that point. But that's kind of what I had. I mean, overall, the trajectory of this season, this is still a good Illinois team. There's no reason to panic. Obviously, they have the bye week coming up. There's going to be things that they address throughout this week. The challenge ahead is still tough, though. I mean, Illinois next faces a Washington team. I mean, if you lose that game, it might be rough. It might, from the outside looking in, it might be rough for Illinois to go into that because Washington's a really good team at home. So you hope that turns out well for Illinois. But the good news is that you have a bye week. Matthew Bailey's perspective was that, hey, this is good. This is probably perfect because we went the longest time in college football without a bye week. Now we get this bye week, get a little bit healthier, prepare for a really rough road trip. We'll see how it all pans out because it'll be interesting to follow. But Illinois is going to have to take care of business the rest of the way against the rest of their schedule. And I think for the most part, the only other road game you have left is at Madison, Wisconsin. You probably feel good going into that game. I mean, there's plenty of opponents that the rest of the schedule is pretty winnable, but you got to take care of business next week. That's going to be really important, or the following week, rather, at Washington. And we'll see how that all pans out. It'll be fun. There's no question about it. But we'll see about how they end up addressing a lot of the things that they saw on film this week, and we'll see how that all pans out. But for now, once again, I really, really appreciate you guys tuning into this episode of the pod. Subscribe, rate, review, please. Like I said, it's really fun. So hope you guys enjoy. So, all right, subscribe, rate, review. Peace.